So we're just going to quickly go over the basics of ChatGPT. So first, what ChatGPT can and cannot do. ChatGPT is not general intelligence. All it does is predict the next word. It does this at massive scale. So there's no consciousness. It's not general AI. It's not God. It doesn't know everything. All it does is text prediction. So with that in mind, it has a limited sense of information. Doesn't have access to the internet. And up until recently, it only knew stuff up until January 2022. That recently got changed. Now it knows stuff until April 2023, which is pretty decent, but still doesn't know the most recent things. I will show an example of that in a second. And it also has no additional context beyond what you give it. So if you ask it, when is my mom's birthday? Fortunately, doesn't know. Also, ChatGPT can sometimes come up with hallucinations. So sometimes it can make up false information and it can do it very confidently. As described by the co-founder of OpenAI's biggest competitor, Anthropic, they're really just sort of designed to predict the next word. And so there will be some rate at which the model does that inaccurately. So I'm going to show a quick example of this. So recently, OpenAI has sort of wrapped ChatGPT around a lot of safety features that ChatGPT now knows when it's going to provide inaccurate information, so it sort of avoids these sort of hallucinations, but it can still happen. So what this is OpenAI Playground gives you raw access to the model. So instead of having whatever OpenAI wraps around ChatGPT, you get raw access to GPT 3.5. You can also access any other model too. So you can access GPT-4. You can also access GPT-3, which predates ChatGPT. And this is what I was using in my project. So I'm assuming you also used DaVinci? Yeah. So DaVinci is what was the popular thing back in the day, which was like last year. So anyways, we can show the knowledge cutoff first. So if I ask ChatGPT who the premier of Manitoba is, as we know, it is Wab Kinew because of the recent election. Manitoba. But ChatGPT says the premier might have changed since then, blah, blah, blah. It knows that it shouldn't be confident about information that can change, like politics. This is a feature provided by OpenAI that wraps around it. But if you just go to the model raw, and let's just say I asked GPT 3.5 Turbo, submit. Yeah, it just says, the premier is Brian Pallister. It doesn't wrap it around all these safety features. It doesn't know that it could be wrong. It just tells me what it is. So it's kind of nice that OpenAI provides this sort of wraparound for safety purposes, but large language models in themselves don't have this built in. The other example I wanted to show is for hallucinations. So this is one I found. Sometimes it's hard to find examples specifically where it'll hallucinate, but this is a pretty good one. So if I go to the older model here and I ask it, when did France give Lithuania the Vilnius TV tower? If you go and look this up, you'll find out France never gifted Lithuania the Vilnius TV tower. Someone built it in 1980. But if you send this to ChatGPT, or I guess GPT-3, it says it. France gifted Lithuania the TV tower, did not gift it. This is hallucinations. It has made up false facts. And you can run this a couple of times and it might give you different answers each time. Let's go more temperature. Okay, yeah, so temperature controls how often the model will pick a less frequent word to finish the next word in. So you can think of a sentence, right? So it gets this first part, and I think he'll talk about this a little more, but it gets this first part, and then it predicts what the next word will be. If the temperature is lower, it's going to pick the most frequent word, the word that it thinks is going to happen most often after the question mark. If you pick a higher temperature more often, it'll pick some less frequent word to go next. So you'll get more variability in the response. Okay, so that's that. Now he's going to talk about how ChatGPT was created.
Yeah, so essentially, ChatGPT was created in 3 steps. Here's AR. So the first step is pre-training of the base model. Is basically Matthew just showed you the chat with like the base model without any wrappers. Yeah. So, but essentially what it does is just predicts the next word. So on each iteration, ChatGPT, I mean, not ChatGPT, but the base model of ChatGPT, it essentially predicts probabilities for every word in its vocabulary. And depending on the temperature parameter, if it's set to 0, then it simply selects the highest probability, the word with highest probability, and outputs this word. Then it essentially, it's like, okay, what's the next word after this word? And it does so until it reaches the end of sequence token. So it's like, so essentially, yeah, it decides to stop because, yeah, for whatever reason, it decides to stop. So yeah, but it's not actually our objective. We don't want to see the most probable word after our input, right? Our objective is to get actually useful responses. And yeah, so that's why we have supervised fine tuning. Essentially, what's going on here is we want to shape the weights of our model to actually suit our needs, right? So we actually want it to be useful and to answer our questions, right? Because if we take the base model, like maybe lower quality base models than ChatGPT's, so it can, let's say we ask it to like, okay, what's the most popular place to eat burger in like Winnipeg, right? It can say, what is the most popular place to eat a burrito in Winnipeg? Because they're close in the sense of semantics, and it may think that it's relevant, but it's actually not. That's why we use supervised fine tuning. It sounds sophisticated, but it's actually not. Supervised means that we have actual data points, features, and labels. And we want the model to learn the statistical relationship between each actual context, in this case, right, features, and the label. So next response in this case. So we basically train the base model. It's called fine tuning because we have, what is fine tuning? Yeah, so it's when we have actually like big, large language model, and we want to shape the weights and train it on additional data to actually, yeah, kind of change their weights to like suit our needs. So yeah, that's basically how a single data point of our data set would look like. So we have context as features and next response of chatbot as a label. And it's actually all filled out by people. So people created the data set of like expected conversations that they would ideally want ChatGPT. Another step ensures safety and actually like responses that would be preferred by humans, right? So what's going on here is that the model, after supervised fine tuning, it outputs, let's say, 4 or like any arbitrary number of responses to like single input, and then there's a person who ranks them from the best to the worst. So the model understands what we are looking for. It's in more technical terms, it's called reinforcement learning. And what happens here is essentially human ranks the responses, and then based on this data, we essentially create the reward model, but it's out of the scope of this presentation. But yeah, we create another model to essentially help our LLM to decide what responses are better and what we actually wanted to output. So yeah, yeah, that's how we shape the weights on top of the base model, so it actually suits our needs.
This is sort of the most important part. If you get anything out of this presentation, I want you to understand what context is, because as a user of ChatGPT, this is the most important part, in my opinion. So in order to understand context, we got to understand tokens. So a token is essentially just a part of a word. It is what we feed into ChatGPT. So all these words that are in the sentence, these each get converted into a separate token. So you can see most words are usually just one token. Some words are multiple tokens. On average, it's going to be about 3/4 of a token per word. No, other way around. One token is going to be 3/4 of a word. There we go. And now each different model of GPT has a certain limit of how many tokens they can process at a time. So GPT-4 or GPT-3, which I showed you before, that's Da Vinci. It's the old model. It can only work with 2048 tokens. Now, with the advent of ChatGPT, they upped that to 4096, and like 2 weeks ago, they upped that to 16,000. So they're increasing the token limits. GPT-4 can process now up to 128,000 tokens, which is enough for a short novel. And what this means is that you have what's called a larger context window. So the number of tokens that your model can take in determines your context window. So if you think of your conversation as a sort of continuum, right? So you have your first messages here and then later on messages down here. And let's say you're sending a message, and this is at this point in time you send the message. The model can only reference that the context window far back into the conversation. So it doesn't know everything that you said previous to that. It can only fit in as much as it can fit in tokens, essentially. So I'll give a little demo of this. So if I ask, if I work with ChatGPT here and I say, remember this, favorite color is purple. And now I ask ChatGPT, what is my favorite color? I say my favorite color is purple because it refers to this context. Now, if I go to a dummy text generator and I get a bunch of useless text to fill up the context window of ChatGPT, and I paste this in here. And now I ask it, what is my favorite color? It works most of the time, not always. Yeah, so it forgot that my favorite color is purple because I've overloaded the context window by providing it a bunch of useless garbage. So that's why understanding context is important. And there is one way to get around this. And if you use the premium version, this is what they do for you. It essentially takes your previous conversation and it asks ChatGPT to summarize the previous conversation and then provides that summary as an input to ChatGPT. So you're essentially making 2 calls to ChatGPT, one time to summarize it and then one time for the actual question. And it can also store the summary, and it does some magic stuff to make larger context stuff work. But at the core, all it is a summary. Now, what this means for you as a user, if you get one thing away, it's from this presentation, it's that when you're using ChatGPT, go wide, don't go long. So what I mean by that is anytime you're in a conversation and you've said information that's no longer pertinent. So, I'm in this conversation and I want to know about my favorite color again. Because I've said all this other stuff unrelated to the question I'm asking, this part of the conversation is useless. So you can just edit this part of the conversation and you can just say, what is my favorite color? And now it remembers again, because this is treated as a separate conversation. So now I've branched my conversation into 2 separate parts, essentially. This part deals with the lorem ipsum, and then the other part deals with the color purple. So anytime you use ChatGPT, always branch your conversations wherever you can. That way you'll be able to preserve the context window. So now I'm going to talk about some approaches to prompt engineering. So this is like the meat and potatoes. This comes from research. This is a pretty new field. Like LLMs have only been around for like, what, 5-ish years? Yeah. So prompt engineering is as a field is pretty new, but there is a little bit of interesting research around it. And if you're interested in the references and actually reading the research, it's at the end of the presentation. So one approach is called few-shot learning or one-shot learning. It's where you provide an example and an output of what you would like the model to give. So normally you'll provide this with an instruction as well, but let's say you don't know how to describe the instruction or you're just bad at giving instructions. Sometimes this approach will allow the model to do what you want it to without explicitly telling it what you want it to do. And the ability to do this is it's an emergent property of the large scale nature of GPT. So because GPT was trained on all of the internet and there's like billions of parameters, it just happens that it can learn tasks like this, A, B, and then A, B, can repeat tasks. So as an example, Let's say I wanted to convert active voice into passive voice, but I didn't know what that's called because I'm not an English major. I don't know how to describe this sort of thing. But all I'm doing is, the cat chases the mouse is chased by the cat. I don't know much about English, but sometimes you need to convert voices. So without telling ChatGPT that I want it to convert this into active voice, it knows their passive voice. It knows to convert this into passive voice automatically based off the examples I've already given it. So that's called few shot, or it's called one shot learning if you only give it one example. The next approach is chain of thought. Now, this is the most popular by far. ChatGPT already has this built into their prompts. But essentially what you do is you ask the LLM to solve a problem is intermediate steps. So you can ask them to break this problem down. And that helps because it mimics your natural train of thought. So it can help the model solve problems that wouldn't normally be able to solve. And the other benefit is you gain a window that you can sort of debug the model. So if you see something's going wrong with the reasoning and you have it broken down into steps, then you as the trainer can say, okay, well, this is where it's going wrong. Maybe I need to adjust my prompt so that it gets better. So there's a good example of this here. So on this side is without chain of thought. So what they're doing is few shot learning. They say, okay, this is the question, that's the answer. Here's another question, and it gets the answer wrong. But if in the answer they do some reasoning, they demonstrate chain of thought, then the model knows to use chain of thought in the next answer, and then it logically reasons through it in steps, and then it gets the proper answer. So another approach is called tree of thought. So essentially, it's just an extension to chain of thought. You ask the model to generate many possible different steps. So you say, okay, what can I do in this situation? And then you just keep asking the question and you'll get a different set of steps. And then you run the model on these different steps. And another approach is self-refine. So this is another really popular one. What you do is you ask the model to critique its own solution, and then you ask the model to refine the solution given the critique. You can see kind of in the GIF here, you feed the input into the model, and then you ask it to refine its solution. This one's a little different than chain of thought because it requires two prompts. So in this case, in the example, it says, give one suggestion to improve the code and then apply the suggestion. So I will give example of that. Self-refine. Okay, yes. So I have some code here. So if I ask the model here to improve, actually, we're going to use GPT 3.5. This one. Okay. So if I just say improve this code. This is just some really poorly written Python code. And honestly, I don't even know what it does. You can see it returns a different version of the code, but I wouldn't call this much better. I still don't know what the function's doing really. So a better way to go about this would be to say, give me some suggestions to improve the code. We've got to remove all this. Okay, so now it gives me some suggestions. I don't really care what the suggestions are. Now we can say apply the above suggestions and provide a final code. Okay, well, there we go. Now there's some comments, calculates the sum of the product of two sets of numbers. It has the input. This is better code, right? So by asking the model to critique its own solution and then apply it, we can get a much better response. And I think I also want to, do I want to do chain of thought? No, it's fine. Yeah, I'll do chain of thought after actually. So ChatGPT has chain of thought built in. So if you ask ChatGPT any specific questions, you'll notice that it lists it out. So it lists out steps and then applies the step. Should I try find? Yeah, oh, actually, this is the one. Okay, sweet. So I asked it a pretty complex question related to PyTorch. This is actual real usage. So what it does is it answers it first as here's a couple of approaches that you could do to fix your problem. 1, do this, 2, do this, 3, do this. And then after it lists out those solutions, it provides the solution. So it's breaking it down into a chain of steps and then giving me the solution. So ChatGPT already has this built in, which is nice. Okay, and then the final approach I want to talk about is a multi-persona approach. So essentially, you tell the LLM to act as an expert in something. So pretend you're a lawyer, pretend you're a doctor. And that way you can get ChatGPT to adapt its context to your specific use case. And it turns out this actually works really well. So these researchers here, they gave some logic puzzles to ChatGPT. And it scored 57% on the logic puzzles. And then they used chain of thought and it scored 65.8, a little bit better, certainly. But the other approach that they did was they said, okay, act as a puzzle solving expert. And that's what SPP profile is, sort of similar to chain of thought. But the last approach that they did is they say, okay, you're going to act as an AI maker. So I want you to summon an AI that's specific to the user's use case. So they developed this prompt, and I can show you a very similar one after this slide. They developed a prompt that will specialize ChatGPT to whatever your specific use case. And you see that actually performs better than chain of thought. So I'll show you kind of how this works. Yes, it's prompt engineering in action. This is like my favorite prompt in the world. It's called Professor Synapse. Have you heard of Professor Synapse? No, okay. So essentially what this does is it tells ChatGPT to act as a conductor of expert agents. And Professor Synapse will summon an AI agent that will solve your specific task. And now you can see here that they're also including chain of thought. So they're asking ChatGPT to break it down into reasoned steps and then list out the steps. And then it also asks Professor Synapse to gather context before coming to a solution. Additionally, it also has some commands listed out here that you could use. The one I want to point out is /save. So when you type /save into Professor Synapse, it'll provide a summary of the conversation. So it'll do what premium GPT models might do, but it's just built in. So that way you can kind of preserve your context window while still getting good use out of a regular ChatGPT. So let me grab this prompt and we're going to play around with it a little bit. So if I just ask ChatGPT by itself, so let's say I'm asking ChatGPT to write me a cover letter, okay? I could just ask ChatGPT to write me the cover letter and, it'll do something, but it's going to be, I didn't give it enough context. All I said is, help me apply for my, co-op software engineering job. I have work experience at Google. That's all I have. So the cover letter that it gives me is really vague. I had the privilege of working on a variety of challenging and impactful projects. Nothing really listed. It's this kind of bad cover letter. Now, if I use the Professor Synapse approach, you'll see, and you can just do this by using this as your first prompt. So now, okay, I'm Professor Synapse. How can I assist you in achieving your goals? Okay, so we're going to ask him the same thing. Okay, so he's going to clarify some context now. What specific aspects or qualifications from the job posting do you want to highlight in your cover letter? Are there any particular achievements or experiences? So it's digging for more because it knows that you're going to write a pretty bad cover letter without all this stuff. So you can say, okay, at Google, I worked on a database project to optimize query times by 98%. And what else? Job postings, any qualifications. I also have extensive experience with. Okay, so now what it's going to do. Could you provide me with your name and the name of the company to personalize the letter? Okay. My name. And the name of the company is Google. Oh, okay, IBM Cloud. Okay, so and instead of writing the whole thing at once, it breaks it down into steps. So it starts with just writing the initial part of the cover letter. So this is just the beginning part. Now it's asking me for more context again, and it's going to keep digging for more context. Did it actually do the? Okay, normally it's supposed to spawn an agent. Wow, I think this is the first time I've not seen it spawn an agent. Okay, well, normally Professor Synapse acts as an agent, agent spawning agents. It's not really cooperating with me today. Try one last time before I give up on getting him to spawn an agent. Okay, there we go. So normally it does this. I don't know why it wasn't doing that before. Like I said, temperature can change things a little bit for the next word. So you can see here, it spawns a specific agent. I'm an expert in Python programs. I know the importance of clean, efficient, and readable code. And what this does is it narrows down the context. Anyways, I usually find that using Professor Synapse is helpful when I have a problem that ChatGPT can't solve. If you want the prompt, you literally just Google Professor Synapse, and it is the first result, and you can just copy it off GitHub and post it into your prompts. And it has been really useful for me. I would suggest the same thing for you. But yeah, that's different approaches to prompt engineering. Now Alex will talk about some alternatives to ChatGPT.
Yes, so essentially, we can, okay, so in the real world, we have many applications of the LLMs like used by companies and stuff. So yeah, essentially we can split them into APIs and actual models that we can load. So yeah, due to the instability with OpenAI's like board and all this crazy stuff that's happening, many companies start to actually doubt building like startups and building actual like core infrastructure, core products based on their APIs, because some may find that unreliable and like questioning, especially okay, right now you can really fine tune the GPT using your own data, and it's pretty easy, but you don't have any like flexibility. You don't own the weights. You don't have the weights. Yeah. So yeah, another class is like open source models, which have like accessible weights, and some of them also provide the data sets they were trained on, and some techniques like Llama 2 from Meta and Mistral 7B from Mistral. So those are just like the most famous ones that you can actually use. So if you want to actually integrate LLMs into your applications, I would definitely recommend you looking into Hugging Face. Is basically cloud for like, no, it's like a hub for open source models. Yeah, so you can play around with them. It's absolutely free, and yeah. So those are less powerful than GPT models, but they're open source. So yeah, you can actually download them and use them without like internet connection and whatever. Just use your own software. So yeah, also, yeah, I wanted to highlight that GPT API is not free if we are talking about using it in like applications. So for instance, when I was working as a startup, I faced an issue that we had to label like 11,000 or like 12,000 products using the API. And at that time it costed like more than like $500 or $700. Meanwhile, so yeah, basically it was an issue at that time because it was a very small startup. And so what I've done is basically I've searched for the model to do the specific task on Hugging Face. And actually, I've done all that model done all the jobs that ChatGPT API was supposed to do for free. And it wasn't worse because it was really suitable for the specific use case. So yeah, nowadays what happens in the real world is that many companies use really specific models that are less powerful, generally speaking, than ChatGPT APIs. for, let's say, text summarization, text translation, and so on. There are a bunch of different actual applications of LLMs. So yeah, I just want to encourage you to, yeah, I just wanted to let you know that there exists a hub for free models that actually perform, like, they perform decent on like on specific tasks. So yeah, especially those two, I encourage you to try them out. So yeah, thank you.
Okay. Now I'm going to just talk about the advanced ChatGPT stuff. So this is the cool stuff that they give to paying people and or stuff that may be coming to everyone in the future. So the first is interaction with the outside world. So this gives ChatGPT the ability to browse the web or generate images or run code. Essentially, what they do is around the character prompt that they give to ChatGPT, they say, you may access the following functions using this notation. And using this, you can interact with basically anything. So what this looks like in practice is here's an example of what one of those commands might be. So if you ask ChatGPT to generate an image, it will spit out something that looks like this. And then OpenAI has a layer before it gets to you that looks for text like this. And it says, okay, if we find text like this, instead of sending it to the user, we're going to run this code. So in this case, if I just send this to ChatGPT, it's going to know what to do with it because it already knows about this notation, and it's going to generate me an image. Let's just give it a second. It's a little bit slow. But yeah, this is just regular function notation, JavaScript. Just pass in a JSON object of the parameters you want. And it generates astronaut on the moon. If I script the notation a bit, it gets really weird about it. So obviously the function's missing a parameter. Yeah, and then it comes back and realizes that it's missing some parameters to pass on. And they also have similar functions for browsing the web. So like it'll send a request to Bing server and saying, hey, please perform this search. And then it'll get all the results and click on web pages, and it's pretty cool. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about is custom GPTs. So this is something that was literally just released like 2 weeks ago. I had to update the slides that I made in order to include this part because it's really cool, and I thought I should talk about it. And I think this is something that they're going to release to the public very, very soon. Right now, like I said, it's just for the paid users. But essentially what you can do is you can generate a model with a custom character prompt, access to specific tools like web browsing, and a specialized knowledge base. And this is the important thing. So maybe it'll just be easier if I show it. Yeah, so I made this Science Advisor custom GPT. So I gave it edit GPT. So I gave it the academic calendar. I just gave it a PDF of the academic calendar. Now OpenAI takes this, reads all the text out of it, and indexes it into a database so that GPT can quickly access different parts of it and search through it. Then I gave a character prompt. So you are Science Advisor. Give concise professional responses and avoid speculation. Refer to in-person advisors when unable to answer. And then I also said, rely on the academic calendar for accurate information. Then you can also give it some conversation starters, which appear here, and a name, and then an image, which you can generate with artificial intelligence, of course. So anyways, this one's pretty cool. This is a prompt I came up with. So let's say you need to, you want to ask, what courses you need for your first year in computer science honors. What it's going to do is it's going to use these commands that we talked about previously, and it's going to use the commands to access the knowledge base. In this case, it's looking through the academic calendar, and it's going to, try and find the first year courses for computer science. Yeah, and then there you go. Let's set it all out. Pretty sick. So this gives you specialized access to certain knowledge bases, and you can ask further questions too, like can I substitute 1220? No, 1230. And yet again, it'll do the search and it'll come up with something. Yeah, the search is pretty quickly too. That's good. Yeah, there you go. Math 1500 to Math 1510. But yeah, that is the cool features that are probably coming to the public very, very shortly. You could also access this through an API. It costs a bit of money, but pretty cool. And yeah, these are references if you're interested in this sort of stuff. Oh, also I have a book. This book was written by the guy who created Wolfram Alpha. It's what is ChatGPT and why does it work? And it gives a pretty good detail. It's a short book, but it gives a pretty good detail and you know, some images and stuff about how it works. But yeah, essentially just text completion. And I think that's everything. Yeah.